This is a very brief tutorial video for Mac users of Artisan software for the Prometheus Roaster Copilot. The initial installation process and the upgrade process are very similar. I'm going to show both, so we'll start out with the assumption that you already have Artisan installed. If you're trying to install it for the very first time, this step doesn't apply to you. But the very first thing we want to do is just go into Artisan and go to Help, Save Settings, and just save a snapshot of your current settings. We likely won't need these, but it's always a good idea to have them in the background just in case something goes wrong. Next, we need to download Artisan. Now, Artisan comes on the USB drive that we include with the Copilot, but if you're upgrading, you'll need to go to the Artisan website to download the most recent version of Artisan for the Copilot. Right now, that is 4.02, and on this release for Macs, they have broken the release up into two different versions, depending on what processor you have. So there's an Apple Silicon version for MacBooks that have an Apple processor, and then there's an Intel version. If you don't know what version you have, simply click the little magnifying glass in the upper right-hand corner of your Mac and type in System Information, and right there, it will show you the type of processor you have. Now, I have an old Intel on this 2017, I think. Maybe it's a 2018 MacBook. And so I need to go with the Intel version. The next thing we'll do is go down to the software version, and you can double check the version of software that you have. For Intel users, you need at least OS 13, and for Apple Silicon users, you need to be on at least version 14 for this. Also, make note of the username of this computer. We're going to need that for a later step. Once you've downloaded the correct version of Artisan, simply go to the Mac's Finder and click in your Downloads folder. That's where the DMG file is located. Just give that file a double click, and it mounts the Artisan installer, but it's not installed yet. To actually do the install, we need to take that Artisan icon and drag it over to the Applications item in the left. Now, you might get this warning if you've got a previous version installed. You can keep both versions. That's entirely up to you whether you want to keep both versions or not. I just said replace, and it's going to go through the entire install process. And after just a few moments, it is done, and Artisan 4.0.2 is already installed on this Mac. Next, you'll just click the Artisan icon in the bottom bar of your computer. You'll get this little warning screen that asks you if you're going to trust the software, and of course we want to. And then Artisan opens up for the first time. You're going to acknowledge that it is open source software, and it'll take you to the donation page. I strongly encourage you to consider a donation to the Artisan project. It is open source, and the only thing that keeps it going is contributions from users who utilize that software. Next, you'll need to download the Copilot settings. Now, those come on the USB drive for a lot of users, but if you're upgrading, just go to prometheus.com/downloads, and you'll find the latest files to download there. Now, every file that you need is in one zip file called copilotprofiles.zip, so just download that file to your computer. Then use Apple's Finder to go to your Downloads folder. And then from that Downloads folder, you can copy the Copilot Profiles folder, go into Documents, and paste it right in place. Now, if you already have a folder, you'll be asked if you want to merge or replace, and you can just say replace for that option. Once that's done, we go back into Artisan and we load the Copilot settings by going to Help, Load Settings, and we go to Documents, open up that Copilot Profiles folder, and look for a settings file that has the word Universal 4 in the file name. These are universal settings. They work on PC or Mac. Regardless of roaster size or model, just load those settings, and that has everything you need for the Copilot. Now, if you were on a PC, your work would be done, but there are a couple more steps that we need to do on a Mac. You'll notice that if you click one of the roast profile buttons at the bottom, your Mac can't find the roast profile, and that's because we have a file path that doesn't exist on a Mac. So you need to go into Config, Events, and click the Buttons tab. There's a field called Documentation, And this is where we point to all of the roast profiles on your computer. And you'll see that there's a C colon that's listed here. Now that means something to a Windows PC, but it doesn't mean anything to a Mac. So we need to replace that C colon with the actual file path to your roast profiles. Now, if you'll remember earlier in this video, you paid note to the name of your computer, and this computer was named Prometheus. So what we need to do here is rename the C colon, or rather replace C colon with /users, capital U, / whatever username your computer is, / documents. And you need to do that for each one of the profiles. What I like to do is just update that very first profile, the 408, and then click the 408 button just to make sure that that profile loads. If that profile loads correctly, then I go back into Config, Events, Buttons, and I just copy that portion of the file path. I'll do the /users, /Prometheus, /documents, and I'll copy that. And then I will replace the C colon in every other line and paste that string right into place. So it becomes a pretty quick process. But once you do that, you should just go through and test out each one of your buttons and make sure that those correctly load the profile. If you get a button that doesn't load a profile, you probably just have a simple typo somewhere. Maybe you accidentally deleted the double quotes, or you've got a / instead of a /, but just pay careful attention to each one of those file paths and make sure that they link correctly. And we're just about done, but there's one new thing in Artisan 4.0 settings for Copilot. This feature itself isn't new, but it is enabling the autosave feature. I've done this by default with these new settings here on a Mac. We need to do something very similar to what we just did with all our roast profiles. Go to Config, Events, Autosave, and you'll see that we have a path that has a C colon in it. So just like you did with your roast profiles, replace that C colon with the string, the /users, /username, / documents, and update that path. And then when you go to your Copilot profiles folder, you'll see a folder called Completed Roasts. And as you roast, Artisan is going to automatically save a copy of that roast in this folder for you. So you don't have to go in and save. You've always got a historical record of every roast you've done in Artisan. Now, this completes the setup, and the last step that I recommend is grabbing a snapshot of everything that we just changed. So let's go into Help, Save Settings, and let's save these settings with something unique. Maybe append it with the word Mac or your username, Jason or Prometheus, and click Save. And this grabs a snapshot of every setting that we just changed so that if we ever need to reset Artisan in the future or restore it or move it to a different Mac, everything is still in place for it. And guys, that's it. You are ready to go roast coffee. So have at it and good luck.